Hello and welcome to Economic Forum, a program where we discuss various issues affecting our economy in Zimbabwe. These can be issues to do with education, with religion, with business and the economy itself, to do with tourism, and also to do with human capital and many other issues. We look at these topics and see how they affect our economy. My name is John Masugu. The ability of an economy to compete fairly and successfully in markets for internationally traded goods and services that allows for rising international standards of living is something that is referred to as competitiveness. There are many other definitions of that concept of competitiveness, which is why today we've brought a guest all the way from the United States of America, and that's Bill Bates. You've come to share ideas about competitiveness. Welcome to Zimbabwe and welcome to Economic Forum.
Thank you very much, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
Maybe first things first, because you have been seeing different sectors of our economy, you have been talking to different people, but with the definition, with the very lean definition that I gave, how would you expand it and also contextualize it?
Yeah, it's a great place to start, John, because when I've been meeting with groups of people, if I asked 20 people in the room, what is competitiveness, I would probably get 20 different answers. And if you look at the dictionary definition of competitiveness, it says that for me to win, you have to lose. And that's not really what I've been talking about while I've been here. I'm really looking at competitiveness as a rising tide lifts all boats. If Zimbabwe is more competitive, that's a good thing for the United States because it creates new markets for us, it creates trading partners, it creates opportunity. And that's really what I'm talking about when I'm saying it would be great for Zimbabwe to be more competitive.
How much knowledge about competitiveness have you found? What have you shared? Are you sharing or did you share similar views with the Zimbabwean businesses as well as individuals?
Yeah, the organization that I have worked for 20 years, called the Council on Competitiveness, is made up of members that are CEOs, university leaders, the heads of labor organizations, and those are the same sorts of folks that I have been meeting with while I'm here. And we've been having really very similar conversations to ones that I have in the United States. It's fascinating to see with the synergies and the similar challenges and opportunities that folks are facing here as they are in the United States.
There's competition and there's competitiveness. Are they similar things?
They are similar things, but I think people get wrapped up in things such as rankings. In other words, the desire to move from 78 on a list to 75 on a list. But that's not really all that helpful to an individual country. In Zimbabwe, if the focus is we want to enroll more students in college and universities, that's what they should focus on and not worry about whether that's going to move them up and down a ranking. So I'm not a huge fan of the big ranking lists. What I'd rather see is a country take an assessment of its own strengths and weaknesses and look for ways to fix the weaknesses and maximize the potential of the strengths. So in Zimbabwe, it might be resources of critical materials or agricultural yields or creating really innovative tourism adventures. Whereas for a different country, it might be a completely different set of priorities and opportunities.
But there are situations where companies can be more competitive in what they're producing and maybe the country may be a bit behind or the other way around. How can countries and their companies move together than having this individualistic approach?
Yeah, a big part of that is communication. And while I've been here, I've met with different business groups and talked a lot about how best to convey the opportunity they see to the government and for the government to try and be a partner in those efforts. And it's a big challenge, it really is. One of the things that they're really trying to explore is who could be the champions in government? Who could they go to try and align interests where what they're pushing for, if it's easier access to capital or more certainty in the business climate, who can they go to make that case where that's also going to benefit that person who's going to be able to say, We've created 500 new jobs. We've increased the GDP by 1%. So those are the sorts of conversations we've been having.
And what is happening nowadays is that there is a clamor for goods from many developing countries, and which means there's a lot of competition there. How can that be approached so that as business in Zimbabwe, we approach it in such a way that we don't damage our teamwork and our working together?
Yeah, a big topic we've been talking about has been around supply chains and how the pandemic showed us all that we're interconnected and there's tremendous risk if you have one supplier. So if you're getting all your material from China, that's a problem, or if you're getting all your material from the United States. So I think that created an opportunity for companies to diversify, really a mandate for companies to diversify and reach out to different partners around the world. And I think that's something that's a security issue in the sense of business operations and being able to manage another pandemic or a natural disaster or any other kind of disruption or ongoing global uncertainty, the war in Russia, the tension between the US and China, all those are incentive for companies to protect themselves and trade and partner with as many places as possible.
Who have you been meeting in Zimbabwe, so that in the next segment we'll be looking at some of the things that you have been sharing with them? Which sectors did you target to share your views? Obviously you were sharing and also listening to what they have to offer or what they have to tell you.
Yeah, a wide variety of groups. I've met with small business owners, entrepreneurs, women executives, university leaders, and business groups, including the Chamber and the Confederation of Industries, the National Competitiveness Commission. So really just a great and diverse group of people.
That's Bill Bates, who is a competitiveness expert coming from the United States of America and was visiting Zimbabwe, sharing ideas on competitiveness with different sectors of our economy. So join us in the second segment, so that we'll be looking at what exactly Bill has been sharing and what the companies or the individuals that he met also shared with him. We are now in the second segment of Economic Forum, where today we are discussing with our guest all the way from the United States of America, and that's Bill Bates. He's sharing ideas with the business organizations, with individuals in Zimbabwe about competitiveness in the world, in regions, as well as in Zimbabwe. Now, one of the things that you mentioned in the first segment was the importance of communication. For instance, when you came to Zimbabwe, what did you know about Zimbabwe, Zimbabwean business or economy, and where did you get that from?
A lot of Googling before I showed up and searching the internet and things like that. But
was it from Zimbabwean sources?
Many of them, yes. But I had significant meetings with the embassy folks from the U.S. Embassy who briefed me, and I talked to one of my early meetings was with local business leaders here. So it was a fire hose of information in a very short period of time. And
the other thing, as we discuss competitiveness, is the ease of doing business. People will be wanting to do business with us. What is it that you have been sharing regarding the ease of doing business in the country, and what did you learn from your colleagues?
Yeah, absolutely. What I've been sharing is some building blocks of competitiveness. And then there's a number of different policy areas that one can focus on, taken all together, that would lead towards more productivity, more prosperity, a rising standard of living, back to the big picture competitiveness issue. And one of the first ones I've talked about is making things as easy as possible for people. And that is obviously a challenge here.
Maybe, yeah, how easy? Because you also have to check and balance and make sure that everything is secure and there's no risk.
Absolutely. And similar to ease, speed is another key factor. You want things to happen quickly. If you want to start a business, if you need to register a business, you need to be able to do that quickly. If you have a product you're trying to get to market, you want to be able to try and do that as quickly as possible. So it needs to be, the forms that need to be filled out need to be simple. There can't be a financial barrier to starting a business. You have to always be thinking ahead of time about how to make things happen in a simple manner.
And how do things like pricing affect competitiveness?
Pricing?
Yes.
It could be a huge, especially if you're talking about competing with a large country like China or something like that in the marketplace. There you really have to start to look at quality issues. How do I differentiate what I have? And that could be from a national perspective or a company perspective. One of the other topics I talk a lot about is leveraging the assets that you have and your strengths and not wishing you had a different set of assets. And so if you're looking at Zimbabwe with the tremendous mineral resources, the agricultural program, the tourism opportunity, those would be the areas that I would look to leverage to try and really capitalize on it and create differentiation between other countries that you might see as competitors, so that people really think about, oh, if I'm going to go on a really amazing creative tourism trip, sure, maybe I'm going to go to Victoria Falls, but where else might I go in the country? What else would I want to capitalize on and bring people to, and how to do that in a way that is accessible to as many people as possible?
Maybe one thing you could have noticed during your visit is the fact that we do a lot of reselling of goods from other countries, and unfortunately some of the materials having come from Zimbabwe and so forth. What is your advice in that way, especially when you look at beneficiation and value addition, so that we do everything here and actually benefit from our raw materials?
Yeah, the meetings I have had with some entrepreneurs and some small business owners and creators, those are the people that I would try to drive resources towards and to encourage, because they're the ones that are creating, to your point, new things. They're creating things here in Zimbabwe. It's not just taking something else and putting a new package on it or making it just a little bit different. Those are the folks that are really thinking big and trying to create new products and new services that could be homegrown and have great potential.
Yes. Maybe at this point, let's look at the different businesses or different institutions that you visited and shared ideas with. And one of the main issues, as we were discussing, you were saying education, so that people have the right mindset, so that people are aware of themselves and what they can do. What did you discuss with universities and other tertiary institutions?
I'm having the same conversation today that I have in the United States when I have similar meetings. There is a growing disconnect I think in both countries, where you have schools that have always taught things a certain way, and this is what the degree is, and you have businesses sort of saying, but I kind of need something a little different. When I'm looking to hire somebody, it's great if they know how to program a computer or if they're an engineer, but I also really need somebody that knows how to solve a problem and that works well in a team, that can communicate to investors, to consumers about my product. And I think that's a change in curriculum that we're starting to see a little bit here and in the United States. The other issue is...
maybe before we get to the
Yeah.
other issue, we'll continue with that in the third segment when we also talk about the hubs, the innovative hubs that are being created at different universities. That's Bill Bates, who is our guest today. He is a competitiveness expert coming from the United States of America and has gone around discussing with various institutions and individuals in Zimbabwe about the issue of competitiveness, why it is important and why and how it should be done to the benefit of all. So join us in the third and final segment of Economic Forum. We are now in the third and final segment of Economic Forum where today we are discussing about competitiveness with our guest from the United States of America, Bill Bates, who is a competitiveness expert, and we've touched on various issues, including the definition of competitiveness and why it is important to be competitive in the economy or in business, and also the visits that he has had to various institutions in Zimbabwe to discuss competitiveness. And one of the things we're discussing in the last segment was the issue of tertiary institutions. Did you discuss and also share ideas with them about the innovation or the innovation hubs that they've established in universities, which seem to be doing very well here?
Yes, we did. And that's a topic also in the United States, where they are also creating these hubs. But the opportunity for an innovation hub is tremendous. I mean, that is where you're bringing together in the same place students, researchers, scientists, business people, philanthropists, could even involve local, state, regional government. And the idea is that you want to make it, back to our earlier conversation, as easy as possible for somebody with an idea about a new product or a new service to get the help they need to move it from that idea to the marketplace. So you have mentors that can work with people, you have business leaders, you have legal advice to sort of understand, okay, where do I get started? You have a lot of university professors that may have really great ideas, but they're not business people. They don't know how to get a business up and running. So these innovation hubs are tremendous opportunities to try and really spur growth and make things happen easier and more quickly.
The other group that you met in Zimbabwe are the small businesses, and one of the issues that you were just hinting that they raised was the issue of risk. You know, what is it about risk that they are worried about in order for them to grow?
If you want to be an innovative economy and you want to have a marketplace that is welcoming of new ideas, you have to allow for risk. You have to encourage it, and partnered with that, you have to allow for failure. And it has to be okay to fail and to try again, because that's where new, really exciting ideas come from. And the sense that I got in meeting with some of these entrepreneurs, these really passionate people who are just so excited about this idea they have and how they can get it out there for people to see, is a real concern that if it doesn't work, if they fail this one time, that could be it. That the market here and the culture here is one where that's not going to be acceptable. And I think that's something that would really be too bad if that's the case, because I think it's when I see the excitement in the faces and the eyes of these entrepreneurs, I know that they can do really exciting and great things if they're given the opportunity and the encouragement to do so.
Yes. What opportunity in the context of unstable currencies and fluctuating currencies and so forth, what did you advise in that regard? Because one of the most fearful or risk factors is the currency.
Yeah, I mean, a big factor for all these entrepreneurs and small businesses and big companies, it's not just limited to that, is that access to capital. How can they get funding to grow, to take their business from 10 people to 20 people, to increase the number of trucks they have to 100 from 10? And a real problem is the comfort of outside investors to bring money in to the economy, because there's a fear, a risk that they're not going to be able to get it back out. And I think that's something that, it's not an easy problem to solve. I fully acknowledge that. But if there was sort of one area that I think could make a game-changing difference in the economy, it would be to try and figure out how to access what I think is tremendous global interest in the potential of the Zimbabwe economy. And that could be a real game changer if we can figure that one out.
Let's go on to the other groups that you met. We've just discussed the tertiary institutions, especially the universities and the small businesses. Who else did you meet?
So I had a meeting with 3 of the largest business organizations to talk about their advocacy, their efforts to try and convey a competitiveness agenda to the government. and the successes and the challenges that they've had. And
Let's hear them.
well, a lot of the conversation was around the idea of trying to find a champion in government, trying to find somebody that will be a sympathetic ear, and they haven't had a lot of success in that regard so far. But I know that groups like the National Competitiveness Commission are put together an annual report which lays out a set of recommendations. So I know they're continuing to do so, and that's a group actually that's only 2 years old. So it's really just getting up and running and developing the expertise. I think the area where they see a lot of potential is in increasing their research so that they can provide hard data to government officials, because I think what they've lacked so far is they know what some of the problems are, but they haven't really delineated well, here are what the benefits would be if we make some of these changes, in the sense of some of the things we talked about earlier, like how many jobs would be created? Where would Zimbabwe's economy be 5 years from now if some of these new if ideas were implemented? And this is could be around certainty in business. It could be around making things easier. I know how there's a lot of interest in how do we get the formal and informal economy closer, instead of it being 80-20, how do we make it 70-30, and what change could that be? So those are the sorts of topics
Let's
we talked
talk about the informal economy.
Sure.
What is it that you learned, and what is it that you shared, especially with relation to what obtains in your home country?
Yeah, I mean, a very different dynamic than in the United States, where I don't know that the numbers are probably more like 95 formal, 5 informal, where here I think it's about 80 informal, 20% formal economy, and just a lot of pressure on that 20%, and goes back to some of what we talked about ease of work, which is if you're trying to get some of that 80% over into the formal economy, you want to try and make that as easy as possible and not intimidating. And I think there are efforts to do that. I know there's several big associations around that work, informal economy associations. So again, as far as if I'm looking at touch points where big differences could be made, that's one of them, to try and figure out how to ease that transition.
What would you say is the best exchange of notes, very briefly, between the corporations that you met here, or the business organizations you met here, and those in the United States of America?
I think the big message that I've concluded a lot of my talks with is the fact that the United States, while still the largest economy, is not the only game in town anymore. There is opportunity all over the globe to come up with a new product, a new company, a new technology, and lead in that area. It's a different world than it was 30 years ago, and that's an opportunity for Zimbabwe and Zimbabwe business.
It's no longer business as usual. Business is now global, as you say. That's Bill Bates, who was our guest today. He's a competitiveness expert coming from the United States of America, and he was meeting different business leaders in Zimbabwe as well as the small businesses and industry in order to discuss competitiveness and opportunities that can be found around that area or different areas of business. So what remains, Bill, is to thank you for coming to the program.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can do so on the numbers that are showing on your screen. If you'd like to engage with us about some of the topics or issues that we discuss on this program, you can do so on the social media platforms that are also showing on your screen. If you've missed some of the episodes of Economic Forum, you can actually watch them on our YouTube channel, which is Economic Forum Zimbabwe. So on behalf of the production crew and Bill Bates, this is John Masugu wishing you happy viewing.